All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is the E Squared MMA show coming back to you live. We're going to give it to you about UFC 263, Adesanya versus Vettori 2 for the middleweight title bout. Co-main is Davison Figueiredo versus Brandon Moreno, a rematch for the flyweight title bout. And then the third fight is Leon Edwards and the man Nate Diaz. Lauro?
Yeah, and this whole card's tuning out to be something spectacular because not too long ago when the UFC was in Houston, Diaz, the superstar that he is, he was supposed to be on that card, but hell of a card to put him on in the next few pay-per-views, with two title fights, both that are rematches. So we got something special this Saturday.
Yeah, and Nate Diaz is probably getting paid the most out of any of the fighters on this card, and he's only at third. So the headliner's going to be bangers. We'll just jump right in. Number 14 ranked Paul Craig takes on Jamal Hill, who's 15th ranked in the light heavyweight to kick off the main card. Lauro, take it away.
Okay, with Jamal Hill, looking at the odds right off the bat, he's minus 300, and it's really tough to tell at some of these first intro to main cards because whether the guys aren't as well known or just to have that big of a spread as a favorite is pretty surprising to me. But a little about him, he's minus 300, 15th ranked. He's 8-0 career. He's 4-0 in the UFC. Notable name that he's beat by knockout, Ovin St. Preux. So that was special. He's 30 years old. Big southpaw with 79-inch reach. He'll have a 3-inch reach advantage over Craig. This guy's coming onto the circuit real quick. Let me hear your thoughts on Craig.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the odds because I think it's interesting. They're giving this newcomer a minus 300 when he's fighting Paul Craig, who's been around the UFC for a while. I mean, his last fight, he beat Shogun Rue. And for those of you that don't know, Shogun Rue is a legend. I mean, however, he was in his later career, but still legend. Paul Craig's been around the UFC since 2016. He's fought a lot of who's who. He's beat Magomed Ankalaev, who's currently ranked 7th in the division in a questionable triangle choke with 1 second left in the third round. I think the reason they're giving Jamal Hill these huge odds is just because Paul Craig is known to struggle against strikers. Paul Craig loves submission. He's absolutely crazy with a triangle choke. So this is your classic striker versus grappler matchup. It's going to be really interesting to see if Jamal Hill is as high as they say he is, because this is going to be his first test, a guy that's ranked one above him, to really see where he stands in the light heavyweight division.
Absolutely. And, the minus 300 on paper without diving in a little more in the research is a bit lopsided. But like you said, Paul Craig does struggle with strikers. Out of his 4 losses in the UFC, 3 of them have been knockouts that he's lost to. One was Menafield more recently, and he's going up against a guy, Hill, that lands about triple the amount of strikes per minute significant than Paul Craig does. And he lands with pinpoint accuracy, almost 8 strikes per minute. And for a light heavyweight, that's pretty spectacular. He's dumping out volume. And as you said, Craig's more of a grappler and he loves that triangle choke. But when you look at it again, his takedown accuracy is only 26%. So it's not as big of a threat as you would normally see with a grappler who has wrestling skills as well.
Yeah, and just like the research that I've done on Jamal Hill, if you go back to his previous 2 fights, his last fight that he won, he threw around 250 strikes. The fight before that, he won by a knockout in the second round, and he already had thrown 130. And like you said, what was it? 8 significant strikes landed per minute.
7.9. Damn.
Yeah. So this man's just a straight volume puncher who's going to come and land against a guy who doesn't throw volume, who doesn't really throw on the feet. He's more of a guy that wants to, land a 1-2 quickly, grab you and try to take you down, and then work his positions until he gets a finish. So with the way the odds are, I think it's unwise to throw your money on Jamal Hill. I think Jamal Hill will get this win. I just don't think we've seen enough out of him to put 3-1 odds on him. With that being said, if you wanted to throw something, I would say maybe throw like $10 on Craig and just hope that he gets that takedown and gets on top of him, because I think if he gets it to the ground, I think that's the only chance Paul Craig is going to have an opportunity to win this. I think if it stays on the feet, I just don't see any way to victory for Paul Craig.
Absolutely. You said it best. I maybe punch Craig just because of his experience in the octagon, right? Maybe he's able to weather that storm and, wear on Hill a little bit. I'm not buying the minus 300. Like you said, he hasn't faced the level of competition, let alone this is his first ranked fighter that Hill is facing.
Yeah. So with that, just know I think Lara's in the same boat. If it stays standing, Jamal Hill gets the win. If it goes to the ground, I mean, I haven't seen Jamal Hill on the ground, so I can't really tell you what he's going to look. I know what Paul Craig looks on the ground. It's really good. I just don't see any reason to justify throwing money on Hill at a 3-1 favorite. I think that's way too high. So with that being said, we'll move on to the next fight. It's in the welterweight division. Number 9, Damian Maia taking on number 12, Bilal Muhammad.
Damian Maia, the guy we've talked about on numerous occasions as that sort of gatekeeper in the welterweight division. He's coming in at plus 180 underdog. He's still ranked number 9. He's 28-10, 22-10 in the UFC. But the man in his career has submitted the who's who throughout his career. Ben Askren, Matt Brown, Carlos Condit, Neil Magny, Rick Story, Chael Sonnen, Ed Herman. The list goes on and on. He is an absolute killer, top of the food chain jiu-jitsu. Do not get that twisted.
Yeah, and he's taking on Bilal. Remember the name Muhammad, who Lauro and I are also very high on. I'm pointing this out right now if you can't figure it out. Both these fighters fighting are two of our favorite fighters. One from the old guard and one Bilal Muhammad, who's trying to now come up and be the new guard. With that being said, I just don't see how Damian Maia is going to get the victory just because we know and we've told y'all in the past how Bilal Muhammad fights. He's a pressure fighter and he wants to get it on the ground. And Damian Maia has some of the best jiu-jitsu in the world. So he's already clever off his back and knows what he's doing, but it's not like Bilal Muhammad's ground game is even close to a joke. Like he is very good at top control. He knows what he's doing on the ground. So it's not like Damian Maia is going to be able to sneak a submission out here, and it's night and day when it comes to on the feet between these two.
Absolutely. I agree with the night and day, but at the same time, most recent loss that Damian Maia had, he got knocked out by Gilbert Burns, right? Who possesses some of the most dominant power in the welterweight division. You don't really see that with Bilal Muhammad. Yes, he has volume, but it's not really that knockout power that some of the other guys possess. He hasn't knocked anyone out since 2016. And like you said, he's no slouch off his back by any means, but he is going against, like I said, the top of the food chain in jiu-jitsu. And I think if he pressures that and invites the takedown and Maia's off his back, the odds would swing completely. And he might have to turn it into some sort of scramble because all that stand-up that we just talked about is a wash. Once that goes to the mat, he's in Maia's world. And I like the plus 180 is what I'm getting at with Damian Maia here.
Yeah, I agree. Last fight Bilal Muhammad had, it was ruled a no contest with Leon Edwards because of an eye poke. I personally think that was a way step up in competition, and it showed Leon Edwards was dominating that fight before that eye pokage. So I'm glad to see that Dana gave Bilal someone in the rankings, but someone closer to him because Bilal, I think, shot way too high and tried to reach too high. And I think that would have been bad for him to suffer that loss. It would have been a huge setback. And now since he's facing Damian Maia, he possibly could secure a win against Damian Maia, which would boost his credit and get him closer to where he wants to be. I'm with Lauro on this one. Bilal's minus 265. That's a reasonable line. The thing that I would like people to take a look at is the over in this fight. Like you said, Bilal is not a power puncher. He's more of a frequency thrower, and I think this goes the distance. I don't see Bilal knocking Damian Maia out, let alone submitting him. I definitely don't see Damian Maia knocking out Bilal. I think legitimately the only finish we could see is a Damian Maia submission. Bilal's never been submitted in his career, so that would be very rare to see. I'd like to get your take on that. Do you see this going the distance, or do you see a finish perhaps?
I more or less see this going the distance, right? Taking the over on the rounds, that makes the most sense. Like you said, Bilal has never been submitted before. On the other end of the spectrum, he hasn't faced someone like Damian Maia before. And yeah, we all know Maia's only probably chance is not going to win by decision because he's not going to output more strikes, pressure, get the takedowns, unless it stays on the ground the entire time and he pulls some sweeps, dominant mount control, things like that. Yeah, if Maia wins this, it's by submission. But I think more than likely, Muhammad, if he wins, it's getting the decision.
Yeah, and the last thing I want to say is this is the classic man trying to reach the top versus the gatekeeper of the division. You hear us use that word a lot, but Damian Maia is definitely the gatekeeper from the double-digit rankings to the single-digit rankings in the welterweight. He holds that 9 spot. Bilal's at 12. So this could catapult Bilal into single digits. It really just depends. Uh, where'd my fucking video go?
Yeah, I don't see you.
There we go. So yeah, like I was saying, Damian Maia is the gatekeeper. Now he is no slouch. It's going to be interesting. The last thing I want to bring up is we've talked about it before, Laro, how Bilal is that pressure fighter and he wants to get you to the ground. He's not, he doesn't really, I mean, he'll stand and strike, but the whole game plan is get in your face, strike with you, and then secure the takedown and use his ground and pound. Do you see that? Do you see him maybe possibly doing a little different since it is Damian Maia who is completely comfortable on his back and is very active and knows what he's doing?
I think he has to switch up his game plan unless he's that confident, pressuring and putting, if his goal is to put Maia on his back, I just don't in the right mind see, unless he's being arrogant, that should be the game plan. I think his way to success might be pressure with the strikes on the feet, but counter use that wrestling and staying off your back because you're going to win that fight on the feet. The only way you get in danger, let's be honest, is if you go to the ground, whether you're on top or on your back. So if I were Bilal, I'd try to avoid that altogether.
Yeah, so there you have it with that fight, ladies and gentlemen. Bilal has the clearest cut way to victory in this fight of keeping it standing. It'll be interesting, though, if he takes it to the ground because we know in his past fights he likes to get it to the ground. I think Laura and I are in agreement, though, with how the odds are. I think your best bet is taking a look at the over just because I don't see either of these fighters getting a finish. We love a dog, too. I mean, if you want to sprinkle Maia, just know that you're going to be hoping that the fight gets to the ground at some point because if it stands, I mean, Damian Maia is just not a striker, so it's not in your best bet. And that's all I have to say on that. Anything else?
Nope. I think, yeah, if you're going to take this bet, it's going to be over on the rounds just to be safe.
All right, let's get into these last 3 fights, the good ones. We have number 3, Leon Edwards versus Nathan Diaz in the welterweight division. Laura.
The Stockton man himself, he's back after quite a long layoff, plus 425. I don't know if he's ever seen this lopsided of odds. Yes, he's facing a guy like Leon Edwards, but for the matchmakers to count Diaz out this bad right off the bat, it's not a good look for anyone because he is dangerous to everyone throughout his career. There's not enough good things I could say about the guy. Elite level black belt jiu-jitsu, one of the highest volume strikers on the planet, and a gas tank with cardio that will not end no matter. He's just always dangerous.
Yeah, and he's facing Leon Edwards, who we just brought up since his last fight was Bilal, where it was an accidental eye poke. He is 18-3, currently ranked 3. I think he's on an 8-fight win streak or a 7-fight win streak, my bad. And just to get out there, Dana already said the winner of this will be next in line after Colby Covington to face Usman for the title. And I want to get your opinion on this, like you said about Diaz with these lopsided odds. Edwards has already talked about how he is basically already looking to Usman. He's not even looking at this fight, which will be really interesting because Diaz came out and said basically that's how my whole career's been. I'm going to bring it to him, though. He thinks Leon, because Leon is not a finisher, and he thinks Leon's going to try to outpoint him. And he said, I'm not with the bullshit. He's like, I'm not going to let someone outpoint me. I'm there to be kill or be killed.
Yeah, I mean, take a look at this. However long ago, the first fight when McGregor went up to welterweight, right? I feel like he was already looking past Diaz, past that challenge. He was looking at a welterweight title shot the first time they fought, and I see some similarities between McGregor and Edwards. In fact, I mean, Edwards isn't as much of a finisher, but we don't know what his gas tank looks like prepared to be a 5-round fight because I don't believe he's been in one, let alone in the UFC, let alone against a guy like Nate Diaz. So, I mean, the longer this fight goes on, the way I see it, if Edwards can't put him away or badly hurt him within the first maybe 2.5 rounds, those last three are up for grab. And we know the later the fight goes on, the more Diaz pours it on and gets that second win against pretty much everybody.
Yeah, and out of his 18 wins, 50% of those, 9 of those have come by decision for Leon Edwards. So he can go the rounds. It's not the question of that. The question is, has he faced someone that gets in your face with the type of gas tank that Nathan Diaz brings? And the really sad part is that yes, Masvidal got the doctor stoppage in his last fight, but I wish he didn't because we didn't get to see what Diaz could have brought in the 4th and 5th round, where arguably those are his strongest rounds. Diaz is known as a slow starter who's gonna he's gonna get hit, but the thing is, he's planning on you exhausting yourself and getting to those championship rounds, and that's when he's gonna really bring it. And like you said, excellent jujitsu. Edwards brings an excellent wrestling game, which could mitigate it, an excellent stand, excellent boxing. If I think the key to first off, I'm going to say this: Nathan Diaz is where the money needs to be on. It's absurd that you're going to get him at almost 4+4 to 1. So you're going to want to put it on there. I mean, you barely get to see him fight. You're going to want to root for him. I think his key is he's got to fight behind that jab that we all know so well from Diaz. What do you think?
It's that jab, it's that Stockton slap, it's the taunting too. Like this, I can't reiterate this enough. This is a fighter that Edwards has not seen at all, and he brings that superstar aspect. Like people root for him. He might be the most popular fighter on this damn card, and I would consider it myself. So yeah, that plus a little over 4-to-1 odds. This is that dog you're taking, and it's a 5-round fight, which in turn benefits Diaz even more.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Edwards is a very humble, respectable guy who goes about his business, just puts in the work, and is a really good fighter. Like you said, though, Diaz brings that mental game when he's in that fight. He's gonna talk shit to you. He's gonna flip you the bird. He's gonna try to make it personal. Um, and the question is, how is Edwards gonna handle that? Is he gonna stick to his game plan? Um, I mean, when we've seen Diaz lost in his last fight, how did Masvidal get that done? He stuck to his game plan and he just counter-strike Diaz because Diaz does leave openings and he pieced him up. Can Edwards do that, or does he run out of juice? Does he get a little aggravated and start throwing heavier or trying to hurt him instead of landing? How do you see this? Do you
And you,
think?
and you know we have, like you said, half the wins that Edwards has acquired throughout his career are a lot of decisions, right? So if he does hurt Nate Diaz, we haven't seen from Edwards that killer mentality. You know, with Masvidal, complete opposite. He's going in there to kill you, and he won't stop until he does. And that's what happened with Diaz. I don't see that side of Edwards, or if he has it, we haven't seen it before. So if he's going to fight like he's saying and going to try to point fight and work Diaz that way, that's not going to be beneficial to him. Like we both said, Diaz comes alive in those championship rounds. So I mean, this is turning out to be arguably the most exciting fight on the card, in my opinion. Just because the matchups, and like I said, it's that championship caliber fight, just without the title.
Yeah, and if you delve in deeper and look at the stats, like height, reach, stuff like that, they're very similar. They're very similar on significant strikes landed, on significant strikes absorbed, on defense, on grappling. They're very similar on the stats. Numbers don't lie. However, like we've said, Diaz brings that mental warfare game where we know Edwards does not. And I think that's going to come down to it. How does Edwards, and the big thing is this is Edwards' biggest fight. This is going to be in front of a live audience where 99% of the people there are going to be on Diaz's side. They're not going to be rooting for Leon, and he probably knows that, but it's going to be how does he handle it once he gets there and realizes, oh shit, 40,000 people are hoping I get my ass kicked. Every little thing Diaz does right in that fight is going to be amplified by the crowd.
Absolutely. Very well said. I think we're both on the same page with almost those over 4-1 odds. Uh, Hit that dog Diaz, and that's pretty much end of story on that. We've said our piece.
Yeah. So Hammer Diaz, one of the legends of the sport, and I think it's going to be arguably the fight of the night. All right, moving on. We have 2 title fights left. We have at the co-main. This is a rematch from last year where it ended in a draw. We have Brandon Moreno taking on the champion Davison, the God of War Figueiredo in the flyweight division.
Uh, I'll make this pretty brief. Brandon Moreno, plus 180, ranked first. Um, in my opinion, there's no real need to dive in too deep with their past because there's a relatively quick rematch turnaround where both fighters are entering their prime and they might have each seen the best of each other only a few months ago. So the past accolades, all that stuff really kind of comes to a wash right now because their most recent fights were against each other, and it's who in their training camp has changed and adapted and improved for this rematch.
Yeah, so I'm gonna lay it out for you, Lauro, and then you're gonna give the feedback, see how it is. So the big questions going into the last fight were Figueiredo already cuts a huge amount of weight for this division. Moreno basically walks around close to this weight. Figueiredo cut weight for this fight. He cut weight for Alex Perez, guillotine choked him. Then he cut weight 3 weeks later for this Brandon Moreno fight last time. So we did see the gas tank kind of go. The announcers were kind of saying that maybe that was a bad decision on his part, cutting weight. 3 weeks when everyone knows Davison Figueiredo cuts a huge amount of weight. Second, he got a point deducted in the last fight for a groin strike, which is how it ended in a draw, which is crazy. So, how do you see that affecting it? The weight as well as the point that was deducted.
I did see the weight deal, and I read an argument with Figueroa's coach, and he said during that time to the weight cut leading up to the fight and in the fight, Figueroa was having some sort of stomach virus. Like he wasn't 100%. That weight cut was really brutal for him. And if you still look at the fight, yeah, that 1 point got deducted. Yeah, he might have gassed near the end. You take that point back, Figueroa wins, right? And now he's made that cut. He knows the training camp. He doesn't have to worry about the opponent as much because he can focus on the conditioning. I'm assuming he's healthier than he was last time. And yeah, you take away that point coming out. I see Figueroa being a better version of himself. And I don't know if I can say the same for Moreno.
Yeah, and in that last fight, I mean, Brandon Moreno showed the heart of a champion, or at least attempting to be a champion. He's a Mexican fighter, and he did what we expect from most Mexican fighters. The man showed that he has a fucking chin because Figueiredo lit his ass up the entire fight. Now, don't get me wrong. Brandon Moreno was landing punches, especially towards the end of those fights, and he was securing the takedowns. And by the end of the fight, those takedowns, Figueiredo was basically accepting the position. He wasn't even trying anymore. He was landing. However, you could clearly see a distinction in power. When Figueiredo lands, it's a pop. It snapped that head back. When Moreno did, it didn't really do anything. He was landing the combinations. And like you said, Figueiredo with the stomach issue, with the weight cuts, he definitely wasn't 100%. And I'm thinking he was just trying to set the record for quickest title defense, and didn't really expect Moreno to hang in there that long and show what he has. Um, with that being said, minus 250 is pretty strong. Brandon Moreno's plus 195. I do think Davison Figueiredo gets this done. Lauro couldn't have said it better. I see a completely not changed man, but he's going to show you why he's the champ and what happens. The real question is, and I'll like to get your opinion on this. I think don't bet on this yet. I think you guys should wait for when we get to see the weigh-ins and see what Figueiredo looks like and see how that weight cut is.
Yeah. Shoot, and tomorrow those odds might change a bit when you see those two on the scale. But you brought up the point I was going to bring up next. Exactly right. When it comes to the striking, Moreno, and I'm not sold on it. He did land a ton of strikes, but he does not have that pop in his punches. Figueroa's way more technically sound on the feet, I believe. His fight IQ is higher, and he's the power striker. And I think if he comes in well conditioned and well prepared for this fight, those punches are going to land even more maybe. And I don't know if Moreno can weather another thunderstorm that came, behind those strikes with Figueiredo. I do. Yeah, I agree waiting until, the weigh-in, see if those odds sway a little bit, but I'm not sold on Moreno at plus 180. I would not hit that, guys.
Yeah, and now let me get your opinion on this, because this is where I'm very interested to see. I don't know the over under of rounds, but does this go the distance again, or is there a finish?
I think that's a coin toss. I think that's a 50-50 chance. Very well it could go to decision again. But like I just said, I don't who knows if Moreno can weather. That was the fight. He was fighting for his life. It seemed like there was no quitting him, but to go through that absolute war, we don't know what kind of damage, permanently that took on him. And if he's prepared for another war like that, another ass beating. Just after that point going away, in his mind, he's like, okay, I might be in this. And maybe that was his, motivation to keep going and finishing strong. If that doesn't play out and he starts getting dominated, I could see Figueiredo breaking him in those later rounds if he doesn't finish him, because he landed some dynamite counter strikes, some dynamite uppercuts. I mean, everything but the kitchen sink we saw, and it was landing. So to say a fighter can take those same shots twice in a row, that's tough to tell. It could go either way.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting too, since this is a rematch. Both camps are going to bring it this time with what happened last time. There were a few tells on both ends of the fighters. For instance, Figueiredo would switch stances, but every time he switched stances to southpaw, he would throw a kick to the body. I'm interested to see if he does that again. If he switched stances, watch out for that. So now it's time, Laura. We got to give predictions. All I want your prediction, and then I want something crazy that fans could sprinkle something on to perhaps get plus money on.
For this Moreno fight,
Yeah, where's the safe money, and then where's slap your dick on the table money?
slap your dick on the table money is taking Davidson Figueiredo. Based on his last fight, I don't see much changing. I see a more improved version of him as opposed to Moreno. Safe money, I guess. Moreno at plus 180. The way he finishes this, like I said, he doesn't have as much pop in his strikes. I don't see him just finishing Figueiredo. I don't at all. But I could see him with more volume in his takedowns and switching it up, changing levels behind a jab cross or something like that, a little better and a little higher volume with more takedowns. Yeah, there's a chance he could win that decision by any means.
Yeah, and I want to point this out too. We've been saying that the gas tank could have kind of wore down on Figueiredo, but let's also look at what we've already said. He went 5 rounds, and it was an absolute war. He cut weight twice in 3 weeks with a stomach issue, and he still managed to go all 5 rounds in an absolute war. So if that doesn't tell you that Figueiredo can completely go 5 rounds healthy, then I don't know what will. I think the real question is if you're going to throw money on Moreno, do you think he's going to bring what he had last time, which was take absolute bombs to the face for 5 rounds? Does he have that in him again? And Figueiredo is going to change it up. Moreno is going to change it up, but there's a huge, clear distinction between the power. I'm going with, if you want to get something interesting, Figueiredo by knockout. I think that's something, even though Moreno showed he had a chin, I think that's your best bet. Figueiredo has a wicked guillotine submission-wise. I just don't see, because Moreno showed it in the last fight that Moreno was securing takedowns on Figueiredo and clearly knew the ground. And if it's anything like the last fight, I doubt these two are going to go to the ground. These two are going to just bang it out again. I would put money on Figueiredo, and I would put money on Figueiredo money line. I know a lot of people. And the other question is, I just thought of this. Let me get your opinion. Is after that fight, a lot of people became Moreno fans. So he went from someone unknown who didn't really have any pressure to someone who now is looked at as a guy like, holy shit, this guy's got a chin. This guy might be able to dethrone the champion. Do you see that affecting him?
I don't see that affecting him at all, because he kind of went through that same adversity when he came into the UFC, right? He was on the Contender Series. He was last pick. He loses a couple fights, gets cut. He wins a belt in a Mexican promotion or whatever, gets re-signed, and then goes on an absolute tear. So I don't see that playing a factor at all in Moreno's camp because he's seen the adversity that the UFC entails before. I think if anything, he's just more hungry. He wants to be the guy to dethrone the champ, and against all odds, pretty much is what it is. So I don't doubt the heart that that Moreno has by any means. It's just whether his body can take that sort of damage again.
Yeah, and normally, guys, we would play the next up with Lauro and get his opinion on who's next in the division. However, this division is one of the weaker divisions in the UFC. Moreno and Figueiredo have cleared out most of the top already and beat them, except for Askar Askarov at 2. So I assume automatically that's probably who's going to get the next fight. I don't see this going to a trilogy just because if Max Holloway Volkanovski doesn't get a third fight, I don't really see how this gets a third fight unless somehow I mean, if you want to be crazy with your money, maybe throw it on another draw. Maybe. I just don't see the judges having that ever. I just don't see back-to-back draws. That would be nuts. So with that, we're saying Davison Figueiredo. If you want Davison Figueiredo by knockout, but I mean, again, this might be fight of the night. Maybe. I mean, you got Nathan Diaz too as fight of the night. Those are 2 fights. And now we will cap it off, ladies and gentlemen, with your main event. For the middleweight title, we have number 3, Marvin Vettori, the challenger, taking on the champ, Israel, the last stylebender, Adesanya.
And as you said, 2 potential fight of the nights in Moreno and then the Diaz fight. Dana White might have to empty his damn pocketbooks for this one because there are 3 potential fight of the nights on this card right here. Marvin Vettori, plus 210, 17-4-1, won 5 of his last 5 in the UFC. The split decision loss was the one prior to that to Izzy, but before Izzy had the belt. All right, he's beat the likes of Costa Fiera, Jack Hermanson, who I'm very high on, is climbing that ladder as well, and Kevin Holland most recently. Izzy's 4 inches taller and has a 6-inch reach advantage, but if y'all have seen that first fight between the two, there's a clear-cut distinction between the types of fighters that these guys are.
Yeah. With that being said, Vettori is a wrestler. Adesanya is a striker. We saw it in their last 2 fights. Vettori beat Holland by basically laying on him. Dana was not happy with that. If it wasn't for Adesanya basically cleaning out the top, I don't think Vettori gets this title fight just because Dana definitely wanted Vettori to go out there and put a stamp on Holland and show why he was the next guy. And the fact that you're just going to lay on Kevin Holland, who's already, I mean, I don't want to hate on the guy, but he's already been exposed to show that his ground game is a big weakness and kind of a hindrance to him. And you just do that on the ground against him. It's going to be nuts, especially with Adesanya, who went up, challenged himself by taking on Jan Blachowicz, who's freaking huge and who has dynamite hands, but also is a wrestler. And he showed Adesanya that he just kept him on the ground. However, I think that might have been due just to like the weight difference. So I'd like to get your opinion on how you see this fight going down.
Yeah. Like you said, I think the way Vettori saw it, he was so hell-bent on getting that title rematch. And yeah, the way he fought Holland was quite boring, but at the same time, when you're that one-dimensional as Kevin Holland is, like Vettori's not going to risk losing right on the feet when he can dominate with his wrestling. I think he just wanted to secure that title shot. And yeah, props to Izzy for going up because in his mind he cleaned out the whole division, but he ran into a freight train that was Jan Blachowicz. God, there's a lot of factors in this fight. All right, you got Vettori's wrestling, but when you just say he's a wrestler, that discredits him as a complete fighter because the way he tore apart Jack Hermanson on the feet was nothing short of spectacular. He does have crisp boxing. His hands are lethal and he throws in volume too. I think the wrestling just complements his game as a whole. And when it comes to Izzy, you know what you're getting, right? His greatest strength, in my opinion, is his feints. The way he uses his feints to keep his distance, which then opens up the door for his counter striking, which is second to none in the UFC. That to me is the X factor. It's whether Vettori can put the pressure with the hands, but move forward while doing it. The way he got caught in their last fight, he would throw the hands, but at the same time, he wouldn't move forward with it and kind of just sit in the pocket. And that's where Izzy, that's where he shines. That's where he's going to counter strike you. And he got caught quite a bit. Then he turned to the wrestling. it comes down to footwork and the feints. I think that if Izzy can implement that, that's the X factor. Because he goes to his back just based off his last fight against Jan. I think he was just overwhelmed, right? He wasn't using jujitsu by means of holding for a stand up, nor committing to trying to get up because he had a guy who was way more experienced on top of him. He was kind of caught in between, and that's why he got stuck there. So that's also kind of a quick turnaround to see if Izzy has tried to improve his jujitsu game and escapes is the same way.
Yeah, and I'll say it right now. I'm in Team Izzy camp, 100%. I think Izzy gets this fight done, and I'm about to explain why. Izzy suffered his first loss last time to Jan. Now he's fighting Vettori, who most people have said gave him arguably the hardest fight that he had at middleweight. With both those in your head right now, I think Izzy lit a match under himself and really went hard in this camp. And I think he wants to show that he is the king of middleweight in this division. And I think he's going to do that. And he's already said in his fights that he doesn't want this to go the distance, that he wants to knock out Vettori, which will be interesting to see because Vettori does have a chin. He's a bigger dude. However, we saw what Adesanya did to Paulo Costa. He absolutely made him look like a fool on his feet. So I'm really excited to see Vettori, who is that technical boxer on the feet, who, like you said, I did discredit him. I'm sorry for that. Who's very good technically versus Adesanya, who might be one of the most free-flowing strikers that the UFC has on their roster.
Yeah, yeah, and which emulates that point is the fight that Izzy had with Anderson Silva, right? Talk about changing of the guard. Back in Silva's prime, he was the most free flowing striker. It's almost as he ran into a younger version of himself when they fought. Yeah, super dynamic, super casual almost, but with the pop of a cobra when he strikes, I mean, his counters are fucking lethal. You could be Team Izzy. I'm drawing the line in the sand right now. I'm Team Vettori. I think he's just as hungry in regards to the fact that he's been on a absolute tear since his last loss. Talk about lighting a match under his ass. That's what did it for Vettori, and God, this fight's close to call, and you can see by the odds. But if you're with me and you like the picks, I'm taking the plus 210. Fuck the rounds because I think Vittori's going for the kill too. Both these guys want to put a stamp on the division and be crowned the king. This is another one of like the previous two fights we've talked about. Potential fight of the night right here.
Yeah, and I think the big thing, Laura, and I want to get your opinion on this, is how much has Izzy's ground game improved? Because I think there is a big difference in skill level when it comes to the ground. I think Vittoria has the clear-cut edge with that. So do you think he managed? Because Jan held him down, but Jan was also, they were fighting in another weight class. But I mean, still, Izzy didn't really show the technical know-how skill to get up.
Almost not even that. There wasn't a sense of urgency, right? He was almost content just being held down, like understood what he got himself into. Maybe it was a mistake. It's not that he's like trying to give up. He just, even on the feet, he doesn't fight with a sense of urgency, right? Typically he's the counter striker, and those guys are typically more laissez-faire with the way they fight. A great example that I want to put out is Carlos Condit. All right. Maybe same wins as same losses in the UFC, right? Amazing dynamic striker, will put the pressure on you. Susceptible to takedowns, don't get me wrong, but I have him and Tony Ferguson, I would say, are the two most active guys off their back. If you get them there, they're not going to stay there for long by any means. And I just don't see that with Adesanya. And if Vettori had those wrestling skills back in 2017 or whenever they fought the first time, I would imagine that his skills have only gotten better. And I can't say the same for Adesanya just based on that last fight with Blachowicz. He's just not comfortable off his back. So that's another X factor if Vettori can get it to the ground. And I think he has a good chance of doing so.
Yeah, and I think now every fight, every round starts on his feet, and that's where Adesanya not only has the huge advantage with his striking, but he also has an 80-inch reach compared to a 74-inch reach. So Vettori is definitely going to have to figure out how to get past that, because I can almost guarantee after his last loss Adesanya had that he's going to be using his reach to keep that distance, because he knows If Vettori gets close, that's when we're going to see, is Adesanya a well-rounded champion? Does he have that ability? Because once it gets close, if Vettori, which I don't think it is because Vittori's not stupid, if they stay at distance, Adesanya is going to win this 100 out of 100 times easily. No questions asked. He's going to have to get inside. He's going to have to figure that out. And then once he gets inside now, ladies and gentlemen, that's when we're going to get to see a middleweight title fight.
Yeah, July 4th right around the corner, right? Nothing short of fireworks is going to be in this one. But like you said, Izzy does have the clear advantage on the feet. Thing is, in his last fight, like we've been saying, the fact that he got taken down quite a bit, and Marvin might have been the only other guy to do it in a long time, is Izzy, when Marvin gets close, a little more technically hesitant, to drop the hands and be ready for the takedown in order to defend it, because he doesn't want to be on his back. And if that's the case, like we've said, Vettori is no slouch with the hands. I mean, if Vettori sets up some sort of feints for a takedown, gets Izzy thinking, and then he's inside his own head, Vettori is just the right guy to let his hands loose, and we've seen it. So I know Izzy's striking is top of the food chain, but I mean, Vettori's shown it too. I'm high on his striking game as well. There's levels to this shit, but Vettori definitely has that knockout ability.
All right, it's time, Laura. I want you to give the fans your pick, and then I want you to give them something crazy they could bet on for this fight.
What's Izzy's spread? Minus what?
Minus 286.
Minus 286. Safe bet, I guess, if you want to say Vettori or Izzy minus 280, to be safe, just based on the first fight, even though I guess it's a reach Vettori at 210, but that's not even the balls to the wall pick I would take. The safe one also might be Vettori by decision, if I see it that way. The one you should hit, if you're feeling ballsy, I would take Vettori by knockout. I think that would shock the world, but at the same time, it's not out of left field to see something like that happening. Just based on the point I said, if Izzy's too worried about the damn takedowns, Vettori's going to let those hands loose. And honestly, we've seen anything can happen in the sport.
Yeah, Marvin Vettori by KO is plus 1,000. So definitely, if you want to go balls to the walls, that would be nuts. Vettori by submission is plus 750. Vettori by decision is plus 375. I'm against Laura on this very rarely. So this is going to be one of those fights where you're going to have to do your own research or figure it out yourself, because we're torn. I have Adesanya, and my crazy bet is Adesanya first round knockout versus Vettori. Put a statement back on the map. There you have it on our picks. The last thing we're going to do, Laura, is the next fight up for this. There's going to be two possible things, because I think this is going to be interesting, and I really want to get your pick. So let's say Vettori wins. Do you see Usman coming up now? Because he said he'd like to fight at middleweight, but he won't fight as long as Izzy is the champ.
I'd pay to see that one. In fact, in the regards that Usman is probably the biggest welterweight we've seen physically. Vettori is one of the biggest middleweights, aside from guys like Costa, we've ever seen. Talk about Clash of the Titans. I think in that fight, wrestling might cancel itself out. And then in terms, that could be a stand-up war as well. But you wouldn't see Usman being a minus 300 to 500 favorite in that by any means.
No, and yeah, I like how you said that. Middleweight is more of Usman's weight. I mean, he cuts a lot of weight to get down to 170. He's a fucking massive 170, and that's the thing. If Vettori wins this, I think there's a really good chance there might be a super fight with Usman going up. Now, if Izzy wins, do you want to see him versus Whitaker? Because I think Whitaker looked damn good in his last fight. Because then you have Whitaker at 1. Costa, who's drunk, at 2 and doesn't want to fight. Vettori at 3, who's fighting, and then Cannonier 4, Brunson, Hermanson, yada yada yada.
Yeah, I think Whitaker's next in line. Costa's still off his spring break hangover, and then July 4th's right around the corner, so God knows where his head's at. Whitaker makes a lot of sense for that next fight. I'm very curious to see what happens to Hermanson, because the adversity he faced against that Shabaznian fight, after he got his ass kicked on the feet, just relentless with the takedown and the ground and pound. Thought he was going to kill the guy. he's right in that mix too. So if you threw him somebody like Costa, if he ever gets his head out of his ass, that could be the next title contender fight in my mind.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Your preview for UFC 263. It'll be this Saturday. I believe it's in Phoenix. If not, it's in Arizona with a live audience. Tune in. You're not going to want to miss it. Some excellent fights. Laura, I'll let you get the last word.
This card is absolutely stacked, ladies and gentlemen. Do not miss this on your calendar. I know Evan and I will be tuning in, so do the same.
See you guys.